Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on?
Welcome back, everybody. The Bacon and Egg Show, weekday edition, show number 50, May 3rd, 2021. Almost halfway through the year. How about that? We're getting there, but show number 50. How's it going, Jay?
We're almost halfway through the year, and we're halfway to 100 on shows, man.
Yep.
It's been we just passed our 1 year anniversary, and now we're hitting another milestone here, the 50th show. Which, when you think about it, us finding a way to get 50 shows in just over a year, I'm kind of proud of us for sticking with it and keep rolling. But it's fun to do this every week. It's fun to show up and to record this show and to talk about stuff that we like to talk about. And now that we've sort of, we've become a little bit more Austin centric as the show has sort of evolved, and now we're trying weekday stuff out, and that's what happens when you do 50 shows. You try stuff out, see if it works, and it's fun to do this every week. So happy to be here, man. What's on the agenda today?
Well, let's get into the cup of coffee. Let's start with NFL draft. That was kind of the big broad news of the weekend. Even going back to Thursday night, the now, full weekend extravaganza that is the NFL draft. Yeah, I mean, any takeaways from this? I know I don't think we're going to go through breaking down each team's like draft grade on players that, 70% are going to flame out, but like, let's kind of talk about where some of the Longhorns ended up, any draft picks otherwise that may have stood out to you. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, let's just start with the Horns here. With the first pick that the Horns had, and that was as we thought would happen. It was Sam Cosmi, went number 51 to the Washington football team. It's amazing, like all the buzz coming off of Cosmi was that he has all this just untapped ability. He was good without having really great technique. He wasn't really coached up to have that technique. And so I think Washington has a project on their hands, but the ceiling for Cosmi is so high because there's just so much that hasn't been developed and taught yet in him. So he has the strength, his hands are just so strong, and that's why he gets away with the technique not being so great at times. And when you have strong hands and strong arms and can get that, and as a lineman can get that punch in front of you, you can save yourself from a lot of other mistakes that you might make. And Washington got a good what I think is a bargain at pick 51 in Samuel Cosmi.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting because I think a lot of people compare him to Connor Williams. I think there are some similarities there, but I don't know if that's quite the closest comparison. So I think, and as with like the NFL draft, it kind of depends on where you end up and what kind of coaching you receive. I think Connor Williams kind of had that high ceiling aspect to him, but then due to injuries, everything that kind of happened in Dallas, he was kind of thrown in maybe a little bit earlier than he was ready to be thrown in and has struggled at times. But yeah, I think Cosmi, Rivera is going to place a premium on having a good offensive line. I think, I don't know. It's interesting. I think I don't want to say like a great spot. They haven't been exactly the model franchise over the last few years, but like, it's got to be better development in coaching than he probably received the last few years at Texas, I would say. And if he was already thought of that highly coming out of Texas with the body of work that he had put together and the development that he'd put together, I mean, he was a low 3-star coming out. He was originally committed to U of H when Herman was there and then followed Herman to Texas. And as we've discussed time and time again on this show, not specific to Herman, but just about the development that was not happening in the Texas program. The fact that he came out and was already this highly thought of, like you said, the ceiling is through the roof. Sky high for him. If he can get some good coaching and continue to develop, he's going to be, again, like you said, a real bargain pick there.
Yeah, and it's a thing where there's going to need to be some patience. I think,
Yeah.
like Connor Williams, the
Yep.
Cowboys are still waiting on him to find that next level,
Right.
and he may still find it. He's still a young player. There's still time for him to find that. He's running out of time. That's something that his clock is ticking a little bit. I think this is really a prove it year for Connor Williams. Cosme going into Washington is going to see the field. I don't know if Rivera, like you said, Ron Rivera is probably going to have a better development program than what we witnessed over the last 4 years on the 40 acres. So it's something to watch here with Cosme. We thought he might have been a first round pick at times coming into the last football season. And he sort of settled into a mid-second round pick, which is still good for him.
Yeah.
And we'll see how he develops in Washington. The next pick, Kerry, was somebody. Now, when I think about another bargain here, like it's not because Osai at times, we're talking Joseph Osai here, went third round pick 69 by the Bengals. So a real nice pick for them there. And it's one of those things where.
Well done.
I thought that he was going to be like, there were whispers of him being a late first round pick at times throughout the season, sliding all the way to the third round here to the Bengals. What do you think about that?
I think for him to slide to that point, I think had a lot to do with kind of how the first round played out. And I mean, when was the first defensive pick in the first round? I mean, it was because we were texting about this during the draft about how like the Cowboys were originally there at number 10
or 8. It was 8. It was 8 because the cornerbacks went right in front of Dallas at 10.
Yeah, just the way that it went, just the kind of like, I think we could probably say like if you were just going off of like best player available, those kinds of things, like Osai should have been like a second rounder, right? Like, I think just based on kind of the body of work that he put together, the potential, all those kinds of things, I think just with the way that the draft played out, like bumps him into the third round, it's, which is fine. That's probably about right, I guess, given that like,
yeah,
the body of work wasn't, this wasn't like 3 or 4 years of him just dominating. He kind of, I don't want to call him like a late riser because we could see the talent there. But again, you kind of talk about, I guess it would have been the 2019 season, sophomore year, where like he was playing out of position. He was being asked to do things that was probably not within his skill set, like downfield coverage,
Right.
So I think, again, this is another value. This is another high potential kind of pick. It's the Bengals. So I don't know. Maybe they're starting to build a little something there with Burrow, and they get Jamar Chase, and like maybe they're kind of the rebuild and kind of getting a young edge rusher like Osai is something that can be the cornerstone of the defense eventually. But I think they got a great value out of it, and but it's Cincinnati. It's hard to get excited for anybody to go play for the Bengals and be like, oh, what a great landing spot for him. Like I don't.
Right.
So that's really the only bummer, is that he wish he would have ended up somewhere better than with the Bengals.
Yeah, and they really were forced into going defense because I don't think Cincinnati was planning necessarily on taking a wide receiver at 7 there. I think that was something where when Chase was still there,
yeah,
it was like that. The link with Burrow I think it was too good to pass up, just like the Cowboys with CeeDee Lamb.
Right.
When something like that just lines up and it falls to you, you kind of just gotta, okay, we have to do this. Like we have to take this.
Right.
So, I think that the Bengals are really forced into making some defensive picks later on because of that early wide receiver pick, and Osai being there for them in the third round. I feel like they were thrilled that he was still on the board or on the board there at that point. Moving on, a couple 5th round picks that were pretty close to each other here. Taquan Graham was the next horn taken, the defensive tackle at fifth round, 148 overall to the Falcons. I'm not surprised that he was drafted. I was surprised that he was the next Horn off the board, though. He's somebody that has worked really hard to get to where he is and to improve on his game. And I was excited for him to be able to be taken there as I guess earlier than I thought he would have been taken there by Atlanta.
I love that pick. I think you mentioned his work ethic. Like, I think the Falcons got a pretty good steal here. It is higher. I completely agree. Like, it was higher than I was expecting him to go. I think we probably would have agreed like that we expected him to get drafted. I think with his work ethic, I think that we haven't seen the best of him. And I wonder how much of guys like Poona Ford and like these other defensive linemen that have been coming out of Texas that have either been like late round picks or just undrafted free agents, Malcolm Roach, Poona, like these guys that have gone and put together really solid NFL careers. I wonder how much of that is starting to catch on a little bit, where a team like the Falcons goes, look at this guy. Like, this is a guy, he's got all the tools. He hadn't even hit his peak yet. Like, he's still learning the position. He's a hard worker. He's got the build for it. He's got the drive. This could be a real pickup here. And that's how I feel about it. I mean, we continue saying this like over these last few years, who's going to be the Longhorn that's like an undrafted free agent that's going to go and is a starter by the end of the season and just completely disrupting an offense that they're facing. And you're going, oh, well, interesting. That didn't happen when they were at Texas because they were not utilized properly. And where that's probably hurt Osai a little bit in his draft evaluations by not having enough tape of probably where the Bengals want him to really play. Someone like Graham, like it's a moldable player that the Falcons have there. Yeah, and that's where I think I love that. I think it's a great fit. I think him going there, I'm a big fan of that pick for the Falcons. Great spot
when you see that big piece of moldable clay just sitting there and the ceiling is high enough to where you can't really afford to pass on it at that point. That's what you get there with Taquan Graham. It's really it's one of those things where we might not ever hear from Taquan Graham. You know, like it might not work for him in the NFL. You know, we could sit here but when I think that Atlanta sees something in him where they thought the ceiling and what they could get out of him was way too high, way too much to pass up, you know, even at that moment in the draft, because a few picks later, 4 or 5 picks later, Caden Stearns goes off the board to the Broncos at pick 152. And that's somebody that I thought would have been coming into the season, would have been drafted higher. I think some inconsistent play from him, taking some bad angles at times, more of that being on film kind of cost him in terms of his draft stock this year. But again, that's somebody where the ceiling is through the roof. And can they capture that lightning in a bottle? Can Denver capture that and just get the best out of Caden Stearns, because he a highly sought after guy coming in, like always somebody that had it blew the top off of it his freshman year, and we just kept waiting and waiting and waiting for that next, you know, this is going to be a guy that's going to be a first round safety in the NFL. And I think that his ceiling was never realized at Texas, whether it was injuries or just spotty play at times, but you know that somewhere in there is a really, really good player at the NFL level. And I don't know if Denver will be able to get that out of Caden Stearns, but he's somebody that I think in the right position can have a really successful NFL career.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how this one plays out. I mean, I think he definitely regressed during his time at Texas. I mean, best season was his freshman year, and then he just never, let alone go beyond that, let alone reached that level again during his time at Texas. Yeah, I mean, the potential's there. I do wonder how much injuries have played. I mean, I think they've definitely played a part in that, him not recapturing what he did his freshman year at Texas, but I'm curious how much injuries may play a role in what he does with Denver going forward. I also wonder how much of him being such an outspoken guy played into maybe his draft stock. And I'm not saying I agree with this because but I'm saying it in the sense of how the NFL operates. It's like these, they just want good company guys to come in that aren't going to rock the boat and be outspoken and those
Right.
kinds of things. And he was very outspoken about the Eyes of Texas stuff and all those kinds of things. And it seemed like he had some conflict, maybe a little bit with the coaching staff over that. Like there's these various factors that maybe, and again, I don't agree with that. I think if the guy can play, he can play. And players should be encouraged to use their voice. But we just know how the NFL is. How much does he really love football? Like all the stupid interview process and all those things that
Yeah.
like some coaches just go, oh, well, okay, we're moving him down our draft board because he's such an outspoken kind of guy. I hate that, but that's, I am curious how much that plays into someone like Caden Stearns. He's just got to show up and work. I don't think there's going to be, and it's not that he never was a hard worker at Texas. So I think him going to Denver, he's got a chip on his shoulder and an opportunity to prove himself. I mean, I don't think he had in his mind that he would be a 5th rounder.
Right.
Coming out of high school and going to a place like Texas and even when deciding to, call it a career at Texas, I don't know if 5th round was probably where he thought he would land, but I hope he makes the most of it. He's got an opportunity there in Denver. I mean, they had a good defense last year. I don't know if he's more of a, I think he's going to see a lot of special teams to start, and that's going to be an opportunity for him to prove himself. And yeah, it's an interesting landing spot. We'll see.
The last Horn drafted was the guy that almost willed this program to success, almost on his back, all by himself at times. Sam Ehlinger was drafted in the 6th round, pick number 218 by the Indianapolis Colts. So it's well earned, by the way. Like I don't think Sam was ever going to be a 1st or 2nd day quarterback.
No.
Daniela asked the other day, she said, if Texas would have won more, would Sam Ehlinger have been drafted higher? And I said, that's a great question. And absolutely, he would have.
Of course.
That plays into it. It plays a lot into it because when you look at his statistics, when you look at his week in and week out numbers, when he was healthy, it competed with some of the best in the country on a week in and week out basis. And it just didn't, there were just times where they couldn't, whether it was coaching or not being put into positions to be successful or punters not reading their second progression on fake punts, whatever it was, it just didn't add up to as many wins. But yeah, I mean, good for Sam. Well earned to be drafted there in the 6th round by the Colts. He's going to back up Carson Wentz, who isn't exactly
durable
at, so who knows? It's one of those things where he reminds me of like if you had to draft a guy, or if you have to have a backup quarterback on your roster and he's just not going to screw it up if he has to go in and play for a little while. Like I feel like he's going to have a Colt McCoy like career to where even if he'll end up starting some games here and there because of injuries, and he'll do just fine, and he'll be a backup on an organization for 13 years just because he's a good quarterback. He's going to be a guy that's going to come in and work hard, and exactly what you're going to get from him on a week in and week out basis in your organization. And I wish him a lot of luck. I'm happy for Sam to be drafted, and like I said earlier, he earned it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we talk about landing spot. I think it worked out perfectly for him. I mean, you talk about a coach with Frank Reich that can, with what he did in Philadelphia with Wentz and Foles there in that Super Bowl year, and now he's got Wentz back. But like, I mean, he knows how to utilize quarterbacks, and I'm curious to see what he does with Sam. I mean, the thing is with like the draft spot for him, there started to be this talk, I guess last week, kind of like local radio, kind of like, oh, his stock is rising. He might, he could be going in the 3rd round or something like that. It's like, no, I mean, I don't think the NFL, you either have to win a ton of games in college or you have to have some kind of freakish number or something like that catches the scout's eye. I mean, you just look at the front of the draft. Okay, you have Trevor Lawrence, who won just about everything during his time at Clemson and also had the like physical freak factor going for him. Then we talk about Trey Lance, who went 3rd to the 49ers, who I think they only said like he only played or threw like 300 passes, career passes or something like that, which is not a lot. But scouts fell in love with the physique. They fell in love with all the skill set, all those things. Guys like Sam kind of that are consistent, stable, probably safe quarterbacks tend to kind of fall off that radar a little bit. Like there's nothing that catches the eye. There's nothing that catches the imagination of like a GM or a coach or something. It's like, oh, we got to get this guy like now, because that's the thing. Like he's not I don't know how to describe it. Like he's not like a Lamar Jackson or just one of these quarterbacks that's just going to pop off the screen when you're watching the game. But he does a lot of he does a lot of little things right. If you put him in a position to succeed, he probably won't let you down, I think is a decent way to describe Sam. And again, like that's kind of what you want out of a backup quarterback. And I think it's a perfect fit for him. I think the Colt comparison is spot on. He's going to make a good career out of it. He'll be in the league for a while. And then when he's no longer in the NFL, he's going to be just fine. He's got his business degree and nobody needs to worry about Sam in the future. But I think it's a great spot for him. I honestly, the Carson Wentz injury thing is going to loom over that. I would not be surprised if we saw a lot of action out of Sam this year with the Colts. And with maybe even down the road in Houston, maybe he makes the debut down at NRG against the Texans.
The Fighting Easter Bees.
Yeah, against the Easter Boys.
I'm not even going to sour this.
Yeah, moving on from that.
Texans talk. Ehlinger is actually the first quarterback since McCoy to be drafted from Texas, if that links it together even more. So he's going to play. Oh, what I was going to say is with the way that NFL offenses are evolving now, a quarterback like Sam Ehlinger, that with the zone read type stuff where you have to make defenses plan for that. I think we're going to see more and more creativity by these football teams, offensive coordinators and head coaches to make teams plan for multiple quarterbacks, like Sean Payton did in New Orleans. And I just think like with Kyle Shanahan taking Trey Lance at number 3, it's the same sort of offense that he had so much success with Robert Griffin, the zone read stuff where we're going to run this offense and we're going to make you make a decision on what to stop. And then we're going to do whatever it is that you can't stop. And our athletes are going to be better than your athletes. And that's why Kyle Shanahan takes an athlete like Trey Lance that played one college football game last season. And then, like you said, has thrown like 300 passes his entire college career, because that schematically everything that Trey Lance does well, that jumps off on film, even though it was at North Dakota State, that's what bodes well in a Kyle Shanahan offense. That's why they picked him number 3. Sam Ehlinger is not Trey Lance, but what he is somebody that can make defenses prepare for multiple looks with his skill set, with his legs, and his ability to make multiple types of throws at any given time. So that's why he's going to be one of those guys that's going to have just a long, successful career, because he's so smart. He's a student of the game. Like it's not, and I'm not doing this to do the funny cliche thing like we do sometimes. I'm serious. Like, the guy is so smart. Like you were saying, he's got an MBA. He's already got. I think on local radio, I heard they asked him about, like, well, what are you going to do after football? Like, you're not going to play. Your typical question. That you would ask a draft. Well, you can't play football forever. What are you going to do? And he's like, I've got this stuff with property and property management,
Yeah.
and I've got this with this. He's a businessman. Like, he's setting himself up already, and equity stuff, whatever's kind of fancy market, whatever. He's into it though, and he's a businessman, and he's already setting himself up for the future. Like Colt McCoy did doing LASIK eye commercials here in local radio for a while, where he was able to see individual leaves on trees and stuff like that. But I mean, Ehlinger is going to have a long career, I feel, in the NFL, just being himself.
Well, I'm curious. I'm sitting here kind of thinking about, we talk about this whole thing like with potential and what it is always interesting to me to see the players that kind of, you talk about their college careers, and like, the Texans drafted David Mills from Stanford in the 3rd round, the 67th overall pick. Is there anything, and I have to admit, I didn't watch a ton of Stanford football the last couple years, but like,
oh no,
but what is it about a David Mills that has him going so much earlier than Sam Ehlinger or Kellen Mond, who went the pick before Mills?
That's a good question. I mean, with Mond, you see the talent. I think Mond's a talented guy.
Sure.
Aggie or not Aggie, but like, he's a talented dude. But your point is a valid one. It's like, once you pass the first sort of, like, there were 5 quarterbacks, the top 5 that everybody was talking about that could go anywhere in the first round, really. And after that, I think there was a lot more debate in terms of the value of these quarterbacks that went later in the draft. Or maybe there were some teams that were thinking Ehlinger was a 3rd round guy that was capable in the right system of being worthy of a 3rd round pick. Maybe that was the case. But with someone like Mills, it's like, okay, you played at Stanford. I don't know. I don't know why there's not. He had a good pro day. I know, like, that. It's just those things that something catches a developer's eye or a scout's eye, and it's like, yeah.
Well, like, take Sam Ehlinger out of it. Ian Book didn't go until pick number 133. Like, what about? I mean, I don't hate to quit picking on David Mills here, but like,
well,
Ian Book had a hell of a career.
I get what you're saying, man. With this, I think, and I was watching the NFL Network draft coverage at the time, and I feel bad for David Mills, because if his family had NFL Network on, all Rich Eisen did after the Texans made that pick was like, what is up with that? What? And he literally said that for 30 seconds, and I felt bad for the guy, because it was it's his draft pick. But Houston is making
I guess we have to clarify who we're talking about here.
Yeah, this is the Houston Texan franchise that we're talking about here, and
he probably smiles with his eyes or something like that. Easterby probably
strapped his surfboard onto his Jeep in California, bro, and he was ready for it. But the Texans are preparing for life without Deshaun Watson. So there's not a lot of people in the NFL, from all the talk that I saw and heard over the weekend, that think Deshaun Watson's going to play another snap for the Houston Texans.
No, I think that's done. Yeah.
So at this point, the Texans, okay, we got to find a franchise quarterback. Let's try to get as many quarterbacks into the room as possible and see which one works out the best, and try to work with that. So from that perspective, if he was their highest graded quarterback on their board, it was the Texans' first the first pick they had, because of all the picks that they had to trade away to get Laramie Tunsil, that's great. Now you have a franchise left tackle, and now it's worked out to where you're probably not going to have a franchise quarterback behind him at this point. So every decision that the Houston Texans have made, it seems like it's been a wrong one.
Tyrod Taylor's won some games in this league.
Yeah. I mean, Ryan Leaf won some games in this league. Okay. Won games. It's not Tyrod Taylor's not Ryan Leaf. My apologies to Tyrod Taylor and his family for comparing him to Ryan Leaf, but that's not a franchise quarterback. I know you were being facetious there.
Yeah,
it's like, how can you find a franchise quarterback unless you draft one? Because it's not in your quarterback room right now. Yeah, it's not in your quarterback room right now. So David Mills,
No, but that's so to go back to the question earlier about like if Sam had won more games at Texas.
I kept saying Davis and David. I kept going back and forth. Yeah, more disrespect to the kid. It's Davis Mills. But again, sorry about that.
No, yeah, if he's watching, apologies, but he should be watching film.
Sorry, buddy.
No, to go back to the question though, which I think was a great question about if Sam had won more games at Texas, does he get drafted higher than he did? And that's what I look at Ian Book again. Getting drafted as late as he did, and he won a ton of games. He was in college football playoffs. They won games against Clemson. He won a ton, and that didn't do a lot to help his draft stock. Even though, he kind of fits, and he's going to be one to watch with New Orleans with people. It almost reminds me a little bit of the Dak Prescott situation. The 4th round pick, and people he wins the job when Romo gets hurt in the preseason, and people go, where did this guy come from? Oh, you mean the guy that won a shit ton of games at Mississippi State?
Right. Yeah.
This guy that had them up to number 2 in the country at one point when he was there. That guy, the one that won a lot of games. And that's where it is such an inexact science, but then that's when you start I think some of these guys just really outsmart themselves sometimes. You go, okay, you got Ian Book at Notre Dame who won a ton of games. He performed well. He looked like a pro NFL quarterback at times at Notre Dame. And sure, they got stomped in the playoffs, but they, if you're not Alabama or Clemson, Ohio State, big deal. But that's what I just don't understand. And again, sorry, David Mills, but I'll take Ian Book.
Davis.
Is it Davis?
Yes.
Are we sure about that? All right, Davis Mills. Oh God, that's even worse. All right, I'm just gonna keep calling him David.
Man, this is and again, I feel bad because I'm sure I didn't watch a lot of Stanford tape again. We're not as familiar with the West Coast stuff, but and again, I think that anything that the Texans do right now is worthy of a question mark, just in general. So,
God, it is Davis Mills. God.
Some people feel people think this guy is a bargain, he's the next dude in Houston. There are people that are really high on Mills as a quarterback. So people that get paid a lot more money than we get paid to do the show, surprisingly, to make those sorts of decisions. But,
I don't believe that.
Yeah.
See some bank statements.
Show me receipts now.
That's right.
But no, man, that's it. It just shows that when it comes to NFL drafts and how players are evaluated, all these NFL guys, they don't give a shit about winning. They give a crap about how you fit into what they can do in the NFL and how your skills that you were successful in college translate to the NFL. You could play for the worst program, but if you jump off the page and you have measurables, that guy has this, like you said, all you have to do is have one measurable that jumps off the page that somebody says, oh, there was another guy that had that same thing and he had success, so that guy can too. It's the same reason why people pay so much money for horses and stuff like that where bred by Kentucky Derby winners. It's like that horse did it. There's a chance that something connected with that horse might be able to win a Kentucky Derby again someday. And the thought of, oh, this one player has this one skill set that he does really, really well. NFL scouts think they're the smartest guys in the room. And they got to that point because they were good at what they did, I guess. But that's why you see so many guys that get taken early in the NFL draft that don't work out. It's because these scouts, you shouldn't be mad at guys for getting taken early, right? It's like somebody thought they were good enough to be taken that early. So we'll see, not trying to bag on Davis Mills here anymore, but it's like, maybe he has that skill set that, translates directly to what the Houston Texans are going to do this year. But
well,
man,
I think I cracked the case here, actually.
Tell me.
Davis Mills, which now that I got it right, Davis Mills, he attended the Greater Atlanta Christian School. That's where he went to high school.
Which is, okay.
So I think we found the Easterby connection. So
you're saying he fits the culture in Houston. Okay.
And maybe because Ian Book went to Notre Dame, I don't know. I'm not saying there's like an anti-Catholic bias coming from Jack Easterby towards quarterbacks, that attended Catholic universities, but maybe there is. Can you rule it out?
The fact that this is even a real life conversation, that even though you're joking, you're not joking. Like this is not something that could completely be ruled out by that franchise right now. And that's the scary thing about that, is that it's a legitimate question to ask. But again, that's the thing that might have stood out to, even though they've said that Easterby has no say so in personnel decisions.
Oh yeah, none.
He was sitting right there in the draft room next to the guy making the picks. I mean, like, you're telling me that he has no say so in any of that? Like, it's tough right now to.
Yeah, but to be fair, I mean, if you were Caserio, wouldn't you want like a real truth seeker in the room with you too during the draft? Like, wouldn't you want like?
Jeez. I'm not going to do it anymore.
Yeah, we gotta get off of this because we'll end up talking.
We got a lot of good stuff to talk about here.
We got a lot of good stuff to talk about. So let's get out of this. I don't know how we started. See, we start talking about the Longhorns draft, and we end up talking about the Greater Atlanta Christian School and whether or not Davis Mills is the right like denomination of Christianity that Easterby liked to draft him to the Houston Texans. And we might not be wrong. That's the insanity.
Yeah, we might not be wrong. And, I'm sure that that's a great school that he went to. Don't get me wrong. No offense to that school.
Oh, Stanford's a great school.
No, I mean the high school that he went to. But that fits the profile with how things are being done right now in the Houston Texans organization. So it is what it is. We might be right about that. But let's move on. Why don't we move on to La Zona Verde here and get some. You got it on your shirt. Let's talk about some Austin FC action, man.
Let's get to it. We Austin FC won again. It's 2 in a row, sitting at 6 points on the season, and currently, I believe, sitting in 6th place overall in the league. Let me verify this here. I know there were some late games last night, so let me see. Austin is currently sitting 4th in the Western Conference, only 1 point back of first place of the Seattle Sounders. Austin's a point ahead of LAFC in the standings. We talked about how good that squad is, and they're it's a long season, obviously, but basically we're saying this has been a really good start for Austin FC. First clean sheet in club history against Minnesota. Jay, you got to see the match live. I didn't have the opportunity to watch it live. I caught up on some highlights. What I saw the lineup. I guess I can start with what my thoughts were on the starting lineup, because we had talked about the week before that Josh Wolf's going to have some decisions to make. It turns out one of those decisions was kind of made for him. Danny Pereira, I guess, is dealing with some plantar fasciitis. Hopefully he's back from that soon. But this allowed for Tomas Pochettino to get back into the lineup after his MLS paperwork was all sorted out. So he returned to the lineup. Stroud stayed in after his great performance against Colorado the week before. Beasler was back in after paternity leave. What were your thoughts? So basically, essentially sticking with the same lineup. Fagundes stayed in, and what did you make of it? How did this play out for you live?
Well, I think we saw the brand of football that we're going to see from Austin FC, which is just good. They're going to attack, and the defenders are going to be tracking back and doing the best they can. And they just held on again. They were good enough. Silver with the clean sheet, he played on his head. I mean, it was one of those things where save after save, he was just in the right places at the right time, making the plays that he needed to make. There were a couple of questionable decisions. I think one of the punch outs that he had could have been a lot better and set himself up to have to race back. But I think the lineups, we knew what we were going to get out of it. Just Pochettino coming in for Pereira. I like Pereira's speed there in the middle there with Ring, but Pochettino linked up nicely with Ring throughout the match. Ring was definitely the man of the match for me. Despite not scoring the goal, we were sitting here, and I'm loving that Daniela's getting into soccer. And I think there's a lot of people who are sitting down in this Austin locally, I should say, that are getting into this team, that are getting into soccer for the first time, or really diving in, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there watching, and they said the man of the match. The man of the match on TV was Ring as well. And he didn't score. And I said, no, Fagundes scored, but Ring really solidified that team in the middle of the pitch. Even though he made a couple of mistakes, Kerry, he was the captain.
Yeah,
he was the captain.
Yeah, that holding role for him is exactly what he was brought to Austin to do, and to calm things down, to distribute, to basically be a reliable player in front of that back line that can also go forward a little bit and help out. But and that's where it's going to be fascinating to see how, again, we talked about that partnership with him and Pereira, kind of how that's going to play out once Pereira is healthy. Where does Pochettino fit going forward? Because I think we all want Pochettino to be someone that's going forward more than, kind of staying in midfield. But
yes,
I mean, just the goal was just the build-up play for that, the one-touch football to get the ball out there to Stroud, and then just an absolute perfect cross. Like, you couldn't ask for a better ball from Stroud on that goal. I mean, put it right on a plate for Fagundes. And
and he's earned another match out there on the right side. I
absolutely.
Feel like Stroud sort of made that right side his own now. Like, it's going to be tough to take him out of the lineup at this point, because he's really proven. He didn't get the assist on the match before, but basically that ball that he had put in, he created the goal, and this one he got the assist for. It was just such a beautiful cross in. And Fagundes with a really, really nice touch, just put it on the frame, and good things happen, and it has for him. And that's another problem that Wolf is going to have, is Fagundes has scored now back-to-back matches. It's like, how do you keep him off at this point? Even if Pereira's foot is on the mend, how do you take Fagundes out of the starting 11 at this point when he's rewarded you with goals in back-to-back matches? So
exactly, because someone's going to have to be dropped, and that's where it's if Wolf really wants that Ring Pereira partnership in the midfield, well, then you're going to have to shift Pochettino back up somewhere. Well, who are you going to drop at that point? And one thing I wanted to ask you, since you were able to catch the whole match live, is the this has kind of been a continuing topic, but about the number 9, the striker role, and how that's been developing. What did you take away from there?
There's just so much, and again, as I think when the substitutions were made in like 66, 68th minute, whatever it was, and Austin FC brought on 3 substitutions there, and we'll go into that a little more shortly. But I think that it's just knowing, like, with the connection that's going on there, and whoever's in the middle, whether it's Ring and Pochettino or Ring and Pereira, I think that the hold-up play, like, the possession was there. I think the hold-up play is good, and I think that basically as long as those opportunities are like, because Fagundes, that could be one that you look at and you mishit it and it sails to go over the crossbar.
Sure,
You
yeah.
look back at it and you look back at, you still have to make that shot. You still have to hit that true and score it. And when the attacking players for Austin FC are converting on those chances, they're going to be a very difficult team to beat. It doesn't matter who they're playing because the chances are going to be there with as well as they attack with the, like you mentioned earlier, the one-touch football in the middle of the field. They're playing like the last 2 matches they've looked like a well-oiled machine, which they shouldn't look like because they're only 3 matches in as an expansion team. And that's the most exciting part for me is the build-up play in the middle is already where it would be, where we would expect it to be midway through this entire season, in my opinion. And that, to me, if the build-up play is there, the stuff up top, the striker play is it will benefit from it, obviously, because it's going to build up Stroud, whoever is on the outside there, it's going to get the ball in to the middle. They're just constantly attacking. And by the end of the match, defenses are tired from defending this Austin FC attack. So, no, I think that's a good question. And I think as long as that play in the middle of the field continues to hold up, and with Ring playing as well as he is, I see why it was such a coveted get. I see why the fans from where he came from were so mad that they let him get away, because he truly is the captain, the anchor, the calming voice, the calming foot, whatever it is you want to call it, that brings it all together and creates everything. It was really masterful to watch for him. I guess it bodes well for Austin FC moving forward, just to have that sort of masterful performance in the middle by Ring, which then led to the great play up top by the strikers.
Yeah, I think about the striker thing when we think about lineup decisions, because I know it's early and we've seen some good things out of Houston and Gallagher, but we talk about these tough decisions. Cecilio Dominguez has spent some time at striker before in his previous stops. I almost start to want, we haven't seen the kind of crosses over the top into the box to guys like Houston that can get up and head the ball. We are seeing this playing along the ground, passing one touch and working ways in, to get shots and get chances. I almost do wonder if there's a situation where maybe not so much like a false 9 type thing, but maybe where it's not some, when we talk about, is a lineup decision going to be do you have to drop Fagundes to bring Pereira back in? I wonder if it's going to be do you drop someone like Houston to get Pereira back in, to where you have someone like Dominguez or Pochettino or even Fagundes. There's so many options there that you can play this kind of hold up and distribute out to guys like Stroud and, Kolmanic coming from the fullback position. Like, I wonder if that's where we're heading with this now that we've kind of seen them in action. And I wonder if that's the idea of Houston and Gallagher. I think Gallagher, we've talked about this, provides a little bit more final product than maybe Houston does. But I wonder if Houston if the hold-up play is what's keeping him in the lineup, basically. And
that, to me, is the difference. It's the hold-up play that is making all the difference for him and why he plays such an important role there. And he came off, but it's when your substitutions are the first round of substitutions, it was Ray. I'm sorry, it was who came on here? Yeah, Redes, Pereira, and Gallagher. That was the first, and he put them all on at the same time. Talk about a boost, like a jolt, to bring 3 players of that quality on all at the same time.
That's not a parking the bus substitution either late in the game when you're up 1-0.
No.
That's we're continuing forward. Yeah. This isn't over.
And there were opportunities where I thought that Austin FC would score again and stretch it and become a little more comfortable. But again, if that's what the strategy is going to be, it's going to be, well, let's get ahead and let's play some attacking football and let's get ahead, and then let's lay the hammer down. It'll be interesting to me how Austin FC next reacts to being down early. Let's say they give up a cheapie early. How does that change the way Austin FC play? How does that change the attack? Will will it change much? Will we see a different sort of play from, and depending on who's in the middle, whether it's Pochettino or Pereira or whoever's in there, will we see a different type? Because everything from that first match against LAFC, I'm sort of thrown out. Like the first match against in the biggest stage and everything. I'm not putting a ton of weight in sort of some of the play that happened in that first match. My next test for this team is how they react to being down early. So to make a mistake, it's going to happen. Somebody's going to,
Well, that was kind of the case in Colorado. That was went down early to Colorado. Colorado was looking extremely dangerous on the counter. And then those halftime adjustments that Wolf made were just massive. And then they just blew the doors off in that second half.
I agree.
Colorado's not a very good team. And I think it's different when you're in that kind of situation against a team that you're like, nah, look, we didn't play great in this first half, but we know that we can beat this group, versus okay, we really have no margin for error against this team. Like against an LAFC or Seattle or any of these kinds of teams where you get down early and you go, okay, this is a really good team we're up against. We're not just going to kind of, I'm curious. I'm with you. Let's see what they do in that kind of situation where it's like, all right, well, this is going to be a fight to get back into this, and we got to hit that extra gear to salvage a goal and get a point and like scrape one out, so.
And we basically seen like 3 halves of not so great play. And now we've seen 3 halves of pretty good team soccer. Like it's been a tale of like that's right now, the way that the 3 matches have set up, to me, like if you take the first 3 and the last 3 and separate them out, this is 2 different clubs. And since that halftime adjustment that Wolf made in Colorado, so the next time we see Austin take that dip, that's the test. How do we were down, we were already coming in, we were high because it was our first match, and then we sort of had the expectation, let's just get this one under our belt. Take off, win, take off again, keep going up, win. Now, when they hit the skids again, how are they going to react? How does this team react? How do they put it together? Do they look more frantic? Do they look like they're oh my gosh, we have to do this now? Or are they still playing that relaxed brand that they showed most recently against Minnesota to lead to just, hey, we scored our goal, we got there, and we're going to sub some guys on and keep the gas on, but this is the type of game that we're going to play. This is the type of soccer we're going to play. How do they react when they're totally thrown off of that game plan again? And we'll see what happens. And they very well may against Sporting Kansas City here up in their next match.
Yeah, Kansas City's had a little bit. I was just looking at what they've done so far. They've had a little bit of a not tricky, but kind of a bumpy start to the season. They opened up with a 2-1 win over New York Red Bulls to start the season, but then they hadn't won since. They drew at home, their only home game so far, up until this coming Sunday. They drew 1-1 with Orlando and then lost 3-1 this past weekend to Salt Lake. This is a game I think Austin can win. I think Kansas City is a bump up in terms of quality. But see, we say that Minnesota was a playoff team last year. I mean, they've got off to a rough start, but Minnesota was a playoff team, and then they were also a cup finalist in the U.S. Open Cup a while back. They haven't got off to a good start though, but I think Kansas City is going to be another good test. Due to scheduling, we probably won't be able to discuss that Kansas City match because there's going to be the LA Galaxy match coming up the week after before I return. And that's going to be another tricky test. Day game in Los Angeles against another really good team that has some high quality players on it. The Galaxy always have a star-studded lineup, and
definitely.
It really doesn't get. Just looking at this schedule before the home opener. I mean, it's at Kansas City, at the Galaxy, at Nashville, and then the big test at Seattle Sounders, and that's going to be. I mean, they lost to Columbus in the championship last season. They've won some championships here over the last few years. That's going to be a massive test. I feel like that's going to be the one where we really, I think by that point, by the time that this team returns home, on June 19th, we're going to really know how good this team is after the run that they've gone on the road.
I agree, man. It's going to be a true test of their development as a franchise, as a team, as a club, Wolf, as a manager. It's just going to be a really big test here. The first 7 matches on the road, something that's really unheard of. You don't really go through these stretches. It's like the rodeo road trip that the Spurs always take every year, where they're just on the road for this crazy amount of time. And then the back end of that, you get a lot of home games. So like we said early on, being able to develop and sort of come together and mesh on the road. And then when you come back to your home stadium, to where you're most comfortable, it's just like that's an exciting sort of a twist in the middle of this inaugural season for Austin FC to watch as it develops. But yeah, it was a good one, good win, good 3 points against Minnesota, and like you said, back at it against Sporting KC next. So we'll keep talking about it, man. I was downtown. I was on South Congress yesterday. I had an Austin FC shirt on. Guy in an Austin FC hat. Locked eyes. He gave me a Go Verde. It's happening. People in Austin are excited about Austin FC, man. So
hell yeah, man.
Yeah,
Hell yeah.
good stuff. So
well, we'll keep moving along here. I know we got so wrapped up in Davis Mills. We got off of our time schedule here a bit, so we'll kind of hit on some things before wrapping it up for the day. But we got a little bit of Texas basketball news. The Runnin Horns roster is still continuing to shape up a bit. Ramey has officially decided he's coming back. Matt Coleman has officially announced that he's going pro. So some of those players that we talked about that were still up in the air have been clarified. We still haven't heard anything official from Jericho Sims or from Greg Brown. So still waiting to see there, but I don't know if there's a ton of confidence in either of those guys returning to Texas. Jay, what do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think both those guys are as good as gone, and I understand it. Like, I get it. They're both pro guys. They're both going to play.
Yeah.
If it's time, it's time, and it might be time for both of them to go. So, but no, that's sort of the guys that were already on the roster. We're sort of having a little bit clearer picture now. But after we went off the air last week, right after that, after we sort of had a non-update update for the Runnin Horns, that's when Dylan Disu from Vanderbilt decided he was going to jump on board with the Beard train and come on over to 40 Acres. So this is a guy, Kerry, that was transferred from Vanderbilt, had 15 points a game, 9 boards, got a steal, a block, a couple assists every game, and he's not just a one-dimensional guy. He shot well from 3 as well. So it's really another really good get for Beard as this roster is becoming a little bit clearer for him now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he led the SEC in rebounding, right? I mean, it's how do you not feel like your roster is improved when you bring a player in like that? So
right.
I know there's still some building to do, and the portal is active as always, and we'll kind of see. But I mean, I can't help but feel pretty positive about what Chris Beard has done so far in terms of who he's brought back, or been able to, talk into coming back. Really,
right.
It's always tough with a coaching change. Is you got to re-recruit the players that are already on the roster. So, regardless of what happens with Sims and with Brown, I think this roster's looking pretty good going into next year, and there's still quite a few spots left on this team to see what he could potentially fill out with. So yeah, feel pretty positive about it. So,
and as we talked about, as the NBA draft declaration date comes towards the end of the month and some guys are making decisions on whether or not to come back, there'll be another wave of guys that are making decisions there. And so it may be a few weeks before there's another person that joins on, but we also didn't think Disu was joining either. Right. Obviously, we gave all 60 seconds to the Runnin Horns last show because there was nothing to report, and then boom, we got that news a couple hours after recording. So, big time stuff. Missed out on Devontae Jones, the transfer from Coastal Carolina, who Mike, long-run insider Mike Holland told us would either go to Memphis or Michigan, and he ended up going to
He
Michigan.
called it.
He did call it. So, but yeah, hard not to be excited for the way that this roster is shaping up for Chris Beard. Let's move on real quick, Kerry, to the Sluggin Horns, who for the first time in a long time encountered a situation that was a little tough for them, losing the series to Texas Tech.
Yeah, we had been we've had that one circled on the calendar. Well, even the Oklahoma State one, like this run of series is going to determine how good and this team really is, at least in how we, where they are ranking wise and regionals and all those kinds of things. Yeah, you don't like to drop the series at home like that to Tech. They lost the first 2 games. I'm not gonna get into the rain delays and all those kinds of things because it's the same for both teams. And Texas was not on the road. Tech had to deal with that postponement and rain delays and rescheduling as much as Texas did, but they're on the road. It's probably harder on the road team in those situations than it is at the home team. But so I'm not going to use that as any kind of like excuse. And I know Texas won the game on Sunday. A big score too. It was at 11-3, I think was the final.
Yeah, nice to get a win on a Sunday. That's great.
Yeah, so
that's a positive thing to take away from this is getting a win on a Sunday, especially after losing the first couple of games. Like you said, tough with the rescheduling stuff, but to get a Sunday win, I think that was important. That was something that we wanted them to prove that they could do. And although it was a different sort of situation, it wasn't a series clinching win. It was still important for them to get that Sunday win to come out of that series with something, and they did it.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to lose the series, and we talked about this from the flip side of it, about how David Pierce, like his gripe with losing those Sunday games, even though they won the series. It's one thing you win Friday, Saturday, but then it's a little deflating to lose that Sunday game. The flip side of that is if you lose Friday, Saturday, a big win on Sunday could give you a little bit more confidence back before what is now the series of the season coming up. And Texas has dropped to number 6 in the polls. Tech moved up to number 8. TCU is now the number 3 team in the country. And Texas is 2 games back of TCU in the Big 12 standings. There it is. Go up to Fort Worth and let's see how this thing shakes down. This was the adversity that you were talking about, Jay, about what does this team do? And even if it's not within the series so much, how does this team respond to losing the Tech series when this team hadn't lost a series in quite a long time? If they even technically had lost a series this season. I think just really that tournament, again, to open the season is really the only time that you could count that.
First series loss. Yeah. So yeah, I completely agree. And TCU is not anything to sneeze at. That's a great ball club. It's a good program. Going up there to their stadium to do it, it's like you just got to feel good about. Maybe you don't have to necessarily win the series to feel good coming back home, but that sure would be nice to go up there and take 2 or 3 from TCU, which is we've been talking about this. It's like College Game Day was going to a site, it would be there, and it would have been at Austin in Austin against Texas Tech as well. So 2 games back, a good chance to close the ground there. But really, in all honesty, just a good showing in this TCU series is what's important. Before then they have the fighting Bobcats, the fighting Sewell Park Bobcats coming. That one's in Austin this time around?
It is. It's going to be at the Dish. Yeah, trucking up from San Marcos to Austin for a little Tuesday night. That's always a good game. I know that game in San Marcos a few weeks ago was a good one, and that's where we'll kind of see what this Texas team is. If they're coming out hanging their heads a little bit. Texas State's a team that can make you pay on a Tuesday night. So we'll see what this team has shown that they can bounce back. They didn't let that tournament to open the season just derail everything and get their hopes down. And but yeah, this is a pivotal week, at least in terms of where this team finishes in the Big 12 and seeding for the conference conference tournament and all that kind of stuff, and also national perception in terms of how the pollsters and everybody view this team when it's time to start sorting out regionals. So big week ahead for Texas baseball.
Absolutely. Well, anything else, Kerry? We got anything else?
Uh,
There was one other thing I wanted to touch on. Did you have anything else for the breakfast wrap, maybe?
no, I think what you got for that is good. I think the Texas football news, another transfer coming in.
Yeah. Former 5-star prospect Ben Davis transferred in from Alabama as a linebacker. This is a guy who didn't get a lot of run at Bama. You look at the guy's statistics, and it's not like he just was a super big contributor there, but he was 5-star coming out of high school, and the Texas defensive line coach Bo Davis recruited him to Alabama when Davis was coaching there. At the time, Ben Davis was the number one ranked inside linebacker in the entire class. So that's one of those guys where it didn't work out. High ceiling didn't work out at Bama, but we'll see if it works out here in the 40 acres. Little all gas, no brakes there to end the show.
Yeah, for sure. Again, they have certainly identified where there are gaps in this roster. And if anything, I think we've learned a lot about how Sarkisian and his staff views the linebacking unit on this team, with the recent transfers coming in with Davis, and you had Richardson from New Mexico State, and then Thornton coming in from LSU. It's like, throw the numbers at it, because there's a lot of talent there that just maybe hasn't quite panned out. And if the light turns on, you might actually have something. But I'm just glad they're addressing it. There's no excuses to it. Like, oh, well, we just don't have depth at this position. Well, go get it. And they're doing it.
Yeah. Even General Fan can see that linebacker room is a little thin, and so can Sarkisian. So yeah.
Well, that was a good show, Jay. I'm not taking the Tom Herman bait today. You're not getting me this week.
All right,
I'm having fun this week. Anyway. I'm just going to enjoy myself. I'm going 1-0 today.
We did go 1-0 today. Good show, man. Good stuff. And thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate you guys.
Thanks, everybody. Tune in next week. We'll do this again. We'll see you.
ATX represent. Fatal, baby.